like this idea of like what the world should be and what the world will look like and what's the purpose of the stage we're in right now, right? And how you and I can actually make a difference with everyday life. And that's what we're going to be talking about, right? We said our goal in this. Sorry, my camera's like a little off. Okay, our goal is always is to keep it practical, really, really day to day, down to earth, practical. In the every Tuesday afternoon we should be able to do something, or Wednesday afternoon, concrete and tangible about being a Jew, right? We said that Judaism has a lot of perspective from morning to night, what that looks like, what that feels like, what that acts like, and how we can do it. So if there's a lot of things that us Jews are known for, we talked about some of them earlier in this week, but I would definitely say we're probably before foodies existed. We were foodies before foodies were a thing, right? So what do I mean by that? And obviously now the foodies and the trending and the Instagrammers and the cooks and the whatever influencers, it's everywhere. I mean, I think banana bread and sourdough were like the most searched things this year on the internet because food is kind of a big deal, right? You need it, it's necessary. But as Jews, food takes like a really, really central place in life, right? Ask any Jew, what's the Jewish holiday about, right? And they're gonna, what's the overall classic definition? Like, they tried to beat us, we won, let's eat, right? And I'm always like fascinated that our enemies don't realize you're just gonna turn into another culinary experience, right? You like mess with us, now you're a hamantash. You mess with us, great, we have latkes and donuts. Like, so it's a fascinating thing that no one's picked up that pattern yet, but ultimately, really, truly, we're food is a kind of a big deal. And it's kind of central in Judaism, whether it's Shabbat, food takes center stage. It's the food we prepare, and the challah, and I mean, literally, is there a holiday that you know on the Jewish calendar that's not about food? I'll give you a hint. Even the ones that are not about food, like even the ones like where we're fasting on Yom Kippur, we eat a lot before, we eat a lot after. There's a whole breakfast formality, right? Like, so we got this whole food thing down that it's so central and so essential in a real way. But we got to go deeper. And we got to understand this aside from the fact that, okay, obviously humans, we can't live without food, right? And that's essential to our health, to our well being. To, as a matter of fact, if you've ever had a pet that didn't make it or was old, one of the first signs that they're like not doing well is they stop eating. So food is definitely connected to life. You can't go without it. And we understand that psychologically food can have a huge, huge, huge impact on us, right? Eating control. As a parent, you learn that when your child is young to establish healthy eating habits and healthy parameters and not too much control, not too little control. It's like a whole song and dance when it comes to food because it's so essential, so important, and psychologically could play a very big role in our lives, right? You ever had like you were feeling like you're in a funk and all you want to do is like sit down and have a big bowl of mac and cheese or mashed potatoes? I don't know, whatever your comfort food is. Everyone has different comfort food, right? Depending on where we come from and what's cultural norms and what our family made. But there's certain foods that just kind of bring a vibe of something. I once had a young student and we met her on campus through a very string of fascinating events. And she actually didn't know she was Jewish. My mom's family's Jewish. And I said, oh, that means you're Jewish. She's like, no. My mom's family, like the ones in New York and everything, like they're very, very Jewish. And so, it took a while till she walked into the Chabad house, and she did the day before Rosh Hashanah. Now imagine getting ready to feed, hundreds of meals in 48 hours to a very hungry group of college students. There's a lot of food around. There's piled high sweet noodle kugel and fresh challah coming out of the oven. And it's what we'd say a balagan. You ever heard that word? It's chaotic. So the kitchen's balagan, and she walks and she's, oh my gosh, this smells like my grandmother's home. Which grandmother do you think it was? The one in New York, the Jewish grandmother. And her journey and her entry into her connection with Judaism actually didn't start intellectually. It started through her stomach. She came, she sat down, she had a nice, warm piece of kugel, big, delicious piece of challah. This like literally brings me back to being young in my mom's home, in my grandma's home. So food has this like very fascinating bond and connection. And we connect with people over food, like the term, let's sit down and break bread, right? What's that about? Let's break the ice, let's meet, let's eat, let's greet. There's nothing like, meeting people for a great, meal together. in that bond that we shared. Do you remember yesterday I mentioned that when the president of the university came to our Chabad house, he said one of the things that blew his, like he was so fascinated by was that no one was on their phones and everyone was just talking face to face. You know what the other thing he said, aside from loving the challah and asking us for deliveries every once in a while, he was amazed at really watching the slow pace, the calm pace, even though having 75 to 90 students is not calm at all. But he said there's like a certain vibe and an energy at the Shabbat table. And it was from sitting together over food, over a soup. There are many young Jewish boys and young Jewish girls who've met and built beautiful Jewish homes over a nice bowl of matzo ball soup in the Chabad house. So food is so central to who we are. And so why is that? Why is it that emotionally, physically, psychologically, this is such a powerful, powerful thing? So today when it comes to food, we're going to break it into two sections. We're going to first of all take a bird's eye view of kosher, because I think the word kosher we've all heard. You may even hear it in a sitcom. Oh my gosh, that's so not kosher. And somehow the word kosher is kind of, snuck in to like colloquial English, and people will say it, you'll hear it. And sometimes they just know the context of what it means. And sometimes it feels like a list of to-dos or not to-dos, and that can feel confusing. And sometimes it's a place of Jewish guilt, like, oh, I just ate something not kosher, right? Or like someone will post their breakfast and I'll be like, and someone will be like, oh, don't look, Manya, it's ham, right? Like there's like guilt that I may even see their breakfast plate, right? So there's like this also funny layer of like guilt when it comes to kosher. And so hopefully we'll break down and decode some of the ideas that really make things kosher and make things not kosher, and why kosher is so significant. And then we're going to go take a kind of a secondary layer and look and zoom in to the laws of making a bracha, a blessings on food. And they both enmesh so clearly and completely because they're both food related. They're both essential. They're both so central, not just to daily Jewish life, from going to the supermarket to before you pop something in your mouth. They're so like interwoven into the day-to-day life. But aside from that, they both contain within these mitzvot and these traditions contain some really, really essential and fundamental perspective on Judaism. That Judaism has about life, and Judaism has about the world, and Judaism has about your role in this world and my role in this world. And how, yes, a Tuesday afternoon in the cafeteria on campus, if anyone wherever the dining halls are, can be uplifted and holy. Because again, I've said this before, but I think we look at holiness and spirituality on one side, and then there's like my everyday life, like work, job, regular day-to-day stuff I got to get done. And then there's like synagogue, holiness, rabbis, Torah, Beis Chana, but what we're learning, hopefully through all these classes, is it's really enmeshed. And there's no greater manifestation of the big picture and fundamental meshing of material and spiritual like food. So that's the overall, idea. And I know that we are by no means going to cover all of this together. I would say a rabbi, someone who's training to become a rabbi, is going to spend a full year just learning the laws of kosher. Okay? How to handle complicated situations, and we'll talk maybe about some of those fascinating little case studies that have happened in my kitchen, which we'll maybe talk about. So for us to think that in an hour, we're going to cover two really big picture things, a little delusional, right? But we're definitely going to get a sampling, a taste in some fundamentals, and we could walk away from here tomorrow or even tonight for dinner, making a choice and being empowered and being able to say, I can make a kosher choice in my dinner. Little steps, very, very little steps. So what is kosher? What does a kosher mean? So like I said, it's casually used, and we've heard it before, but really the word kosher means fit. It means, God, I created you and I know what's fit for you. This is what I think is best for you. And some people say, oh my goodness, kosher, it's just like such a good health diet. I'm like, chalent, potato kugel, noodle kugel. I mean, you ever sat at a meal at your Chabad house? I have students who would always joke. They'd say, I come to Shabbat at Chabad and I leave with a certain type of full. It's just that Chabad house type of full, that certain extra, like, oh, and then I have other students who say that's the one solid meal I have a week. So we all know that it's not necessarily about what's healthier or not healthier, because you can have a kosher green smoothie or a not kosher green smoothie. You can have a kosher burger or a not kosher burger. So it's really not necessarily particularly about health or health benefits. But we understand how big this idea is, right? Even you see like the bond we form with food. And if someone, God forbid, is sitting Shiva, like the Jewish natural reaction is like, I need to feed everyone. We had a student who passed away. It was really tragic. And one of the things I felt like so obligated to do, it was like the Jewish mother overdrive within me. I made a big pot of soup, made bread, because the students were all coming to Chabad to sit and none of them had eaten. They were all stressed. And I knew like that nourishment and that bond and that eating together, there's a layer that was healing to that. And so that's not just because I'm a neurotic Jewish mother, which it's arguable whether I am or I'm not, to be continued maybe a different time. But the point being is Jewish mothers and overfeeding it's not like a new thing. This is not a new stereotype. And I may be guilty as charged. I mean, I'm going to be very honest. So I got once asked by a student, Manya, you cook weekly and the food is, whatever. Don't you just love cooking? And the answer is no. I actually don't love cooking. I love feeding. I love feeding Jews and nourishing them and giving them a place to connect, to bond, to find themselves as a Jew. So the food is really just a means to something else. But it's not just physical or emotional nourishment. There's something deeper going on here. There's something really powerful going on here. And so, yeah, I mean, I cook because there are people to feed. I cook because there's no one that's making kosher, delicious, homemade food here. I cook because I know that sending a challah to the door of someone who's really panicked and scared is really something powerful. And I've seen firsthand how you never know the power of that extra touch through food. And some of you may have heard this story, but I really share it because it was such an eye-opening moment for me. We deliver matzo ball soups. There's no place to get matzo ball soup. I just had someone who texted me. He looked online for matzo ball soup. The closest deli is 100 miles away. He tried to get them to Uber Eats. He's stuck in quarantine in a hotel with Corona, came down for a business trip, got really sick, and all he needs is a bowl of matzo ball soup. And we brought it to his door. And he literally, a grown man in his 40s, texted me, I'm literally crying. I don't think my recipe is that good, honestly. I think that it was reminding him who he is and he's connected, and that no matter where you go as a Jew, there's a family. But I have one moment where there was a student, popular, like everyone thinks that it person. I mean, I hate to even use that term, but we know what that is, even if it's just a stereotype in the movies that we've heard of, and popular and beautiful and whatever, everyone, and one day I see on Facebook that she's not feeling well. We deliver 150 matzo ball soups a semester. It's usually we got the system down pat. We have them, we defrost them, we put them, we jar, we label, we sticker, we put the spoon, and off it goes. It's pretty aligned process. But this time I went to visit her, and she had not really been coming to Chabad that often. And I can be honest, I did not have triplets yet. So life was a little simpler. And I went and I sat and we talked about her clothing, and we talked about her decor, and we talked about her major. It was like nothing, it was superficial. Maybe sat for an hour and a half, schmoozed a little bit, and left. Well, after that, we became close. She started coming to Chabad. She felt more comfortable. And it came out that she had a lot of baggage, like many of us do in life, right? She had baggage. It was stuff she was carrying around. And so I am not one to mince words. If I feel that someone can use an extra help, I said, look, I have this great therapist in town. And she sat with the therapist, and she really worked through some of her baggage. Well, after she graduated, about a year later, she comes back to visit. And it's Friday night, and she's watching how the growth and the students and the vibe and the energy, and she just got so nostalgic, she started to cry. And I'm going to be honest with you, I thought she was being a little dramatic. She's like, you rabbi, it's amazing, Shabbat, Chabad, saving lives. And I'm like, it was like a lot of stuff mixed together, and it was pretty emotional. And I don't know about you, but sometimes as women, we could get a little emotional, a little dramatic. It's maybe never happened to you, but once or twice it's happened to me, where I've gotten a little more emotional or dramatic or carried away. So I thought it was like one of these emotional, dramatic, carried away things. And I was like, look, honestly, really, you don't have to thank us. Really, you have to thank Lazaroff, because his vision was that wherever a Jew goes, they should have something. They should have a connection. They should have a bond. They should have a place to learn, a place to grow. And the truth is, my husband and I were not that exceptional. Like, if we weren't doing this, we wouldn't be like, okay, we're humanitarians, let's go dig wells in Africa. Honestly, we'd probably be living in a nice Jewish community, going to pizza shops and living life, right? So she's like, no. And then suddenly she gets serious. She's like, you don't understand. And I'm like, okay, what don't I understand? She says, do you remember that night you brought me soup? Now, again, the only reason why I remembered, because again, 150 soup deliveries a semester, you don't really remember necessarily every single one. But I remember because I sat with her and we talked, and that was also the turning point in our relationship where she started to be involved. She says, what you don't know about that night I actually had planned on committing suicide. I had found out really heavy things about my life, about the world, whatever it was. The worst part was I felt very, very, very alone. I had no one to talk to. I felt like it was all my burden. It was just, I was carrying it myself. She said, but when you came and you sat, and I have no idea why I even agreed to get matzo ball soup. Like, what is that, you know? When you came and you sat with me, you just reminded me I'm not alone in this world. And that is a small pint of soup. So food is so powerful. And acknowledging the moments when you come into someone else's life, you don't know the power of what you do and what a matzo ball soup can accomplish, right? But the truth is, it's so much more than that. It's not about a list of what we eat and what we don't eat. Yeah, that too. And we'll get to that shortly. I am keeping track of the time. We'll get to that shortly. But the truth is, we got to be aware that what we put in us, and we're trying to be more aware. There's paleo, there's keto, there's Whole30, there's like all these trends in food, and clean eating and not clean eating, and intuitive eating and diet shaming. And we could go on for hours about all the trends in food. I've been around long enough to like notice the trends, for a while. But we are aware that what we put in affects us, right? If you're exhausted, I'm not going to throw Miriam under the bus, but she had a giant coffee at 9 p.m. last night. Not because she loves to sip coffee at 9 p.m., because she didn't sleep the night before, right? When we put a coffee in our system, guess what? It's going to give us energy. It may not be long-lasting energy, right? When we have a giant, you're studying and it's an all-nighter and you take an energy shot. What we put in our body, we know physically affects us. We certainly know emotionally it affects us. Certainly psychologically, food has very powerful. Many of us struggle with food, what to eat, what not to eat, guilt over food, shame over eating. It's trending everywhere. If you want to just look, there's no shortage of spaces to understand this deeper, and experts in all sorts of perspectives and fields and thoughts of it. But as Jews, this intentionality, this awareness of the power of what food is, since we got the Torah, since God told us, this is a necessary thing, but you can elevate it. You can make it mean something. You can live holy. And as a matter of fact, in the laws of kosher, many times it says, Ki kadosh Lashem, you're holy. You're separate. You are holy. So this is the best plan for you. This is what's fit for you. This is the thing that is going to be the healthiest plan for your body. And so you could still be kosher and on paleo or keto or intuitive eating or whatever the latest trend is, or enjoying sourdough with butter. I'm a big fan. So, or moderation or whatever your local, whatever nutritionist, whatever's going on in your life, right? But that doesn't contradict Judaism's perspective of the power that food is and this importance of it. And when we think of eating and we think of kosher, did you ever think that that has to do with tikkun olam? Tikkun olam, we think, okay, I'm going to go collect backpacks for the poor or do a car wash for the homeless or go to an animal shelter and hold little kitties. And no, tikkun olam is making sure that the beef I pick up in the supermarket is kosher. That if I'm standing on a shelf and there's two types of pastas, I can grab the one with the kosher certification, the one that's fit for me, the one that I could assure that both the process of making it and the cleanliness of the product, and I'm not talking about the factory, but the cleanliness of the ingredients, no cross-contamination, that's fit for me. And that ultimately it's what God decided is for me. Because he made me, he gave me a body. And my body needs food. I need nutrition. I need vitamins. I need energy. I need, you know what we need, right? I don't have to tell you. Vegetables, fruits, and five a day, whatever your thing is, right? But at the end of the day, really, it's so much bigger and so much deeper. It's actually how we elevate matter. So I'm going to do a model right now. I have right near nice, cold and refreshing. I'm kind of a little bit, I'm so obsessed with these guys. Okay, I'm your local Instagrammer. They're really cool and they're refreshing and they have caffeine, which is amazing for a 3:30 p.m. or middle of the afternoon. Though this is like my energy boost. I'm like tired before and I get on here and you guys like just learning together just gives me this awesome boost. So this, you'd look at a can and you'd say, well, is this holy? You're like, well, I mean, it says aha, but what makes it holy? It's a can of seltzer with some green tea and some citrus. I don't know. Okay, so first of all, we got a kosher certificate, little certification, little symbol right there that tells me that the ingredients in here and the plant in here and that it's kosher. There's someone supervising to make sure there's no shenanigans in this can. Just what it says, okay? Because actually, according to the USDA, FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, 2% of ingredients don't need to be listed. Did you know that? 2% of ingredients don't need to be listed. So you can have an item that says sugar-free and actually there's sugar, surprise, oopsies. Now, we've gotten more sensitive with allergies to label things, but with kosher, you know what you're getting. So first I'm gonna put it into my thing. And you know what I'm gonna be doing? I'm actually gonna be elevating the carbon in here, the water, the lemon. I think maybe it came from a lemon. I'm not sure if it's a natural lemon or a real lemon. I don't know how long ago the lemon was on the tree, but we're not judging. I'm going to be elevating them. By how? First of all, making sure that the ingredient is kosher. It's fit for me. It works. Second of all, which it has a kosher certificate. I can't even show you because it's so minor, but rest assured, many of them actually have it on the tab. Some of them have it over here by the ingredients. You just got to look. Sometimes you need a magnifying glass. And then I'm going to put it into my nice clean cup that is not just clean, but I just ate a meat meal. So this is a cup for my meat side. There you go. I'm not like cross-contaminating my dishes, which we'll talk about shortly. And then I'm going to make a bracha, a blessing, which we'll talk more about. But that's how I'm going to elevate it. So Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehakol Niyeh B'Dvaro. And the energy and the hydration I'm getting from it, what does that give me? Now I'm investing all that divine energy into learning Torah together, into sharing ideas that are big, that maybe can transform us in a real way, in a practical way, in a daily way, not in an abstract, lofty, intangible, all about the tangible. Because we believe in Judaism that everything has a divine, godly spark. You and I know we have a neshama, but did you know that that green tea leaf had a type of soul too? Did you know that even the carbon, whatever CO2 in here, well, I don't know if it's CO2, whatever it is, the carbon stuff, not a science major. Also, someone could correct me, feel free. Also has a godly soul. If it exists in this world, if it's matter that we can see and touch, it has divine energy. And do you know what that little lemon or lemon essence wants? It wants to fulfill its mission in this world. It wants to be elevated, and you get to do it. And that's part of Tikkun Olam. And that's kind of a pretty big deal. So yeah, you sitting down for a nice meal, you have the opportunity for Tikkun Olam. Now your bat mitzvah projects would be so much easier. You could just eat your way through kosher restaurants and you'd be like, bat mitzvah project, check, Tikkun Olam, done. And it's delicious, right? So it's a little late for that, but keep that in mind for the future, God willing. But point is that we don't think of it that way. We don't think of elevating food, grapes, a glass, a cup. We don't think that way. But what Judaism and Kabbalah, deeper mysticism explains is that everything has potential for holiness. And you and I are empowered and also responsible to reveal that, to unearth that, to allow it to shine outward. And the truth is, that's what makes us different than animals, that you and I mean, there's many differences, but that food and eating is not just rote. If you remember, I think on Monday morning, it was a while ago, but Shifra actually opened up with something I was going to mention here, that in the book of Maimonides, it deals with holiness. It deals with foods we don't eat. Food, that's the holiness section. Why can't there be the culinary section? because we see what we put in and how we can elevate the world. We can make, yeah, I can make an apple holy. I could also use it the wrong way. I could throw it at someone and hurt them. Not a good idea, right? But I can make it holy. Even, yes, a nice bottle of wine, holy, potentially holy. I can use it for kiddush. I can make sure the grapes are holy. I can make a blessing on it, which we'll talk about shortly. So food is a really powerful thing. Now, the truth is with animals, we make sure we treat them properly. There is no such thing as real kosher veal. The way veal is made, that's not kosher. Not kosher veal. They take the little, I don't want to say it, but they take the little baby lamb and they put it in a little box so it can't move. That's not okay for kosher. And we don't eat animals that are carnivorous. We don't eat animals that eat other animals because we absorb the energy of that animal. Do I want to absorb the energy of a wolf? Not really. And even the way our animals are slaughtered, there has to be ethics involved, right? We cannot just go out hunting. I remember when I got a phone call, because I live in Texas, where it's normal to pull up to a red light in the back of the pickup truck near me. There is like, someone on the way home from hunting, and like their pickup truck, instead of being full like bottles or boxes, is full of animals that were just hunted. It's like a normal sight, though as a New Yorker, that's still not normal for me. But oh well, that's kind of a thing. I see your question. We'll definitely get to it, okay? If you don't mind holding on to it, write it down, because I just want to be able to make sure that we're at least covering stuff, and we'll make sure to get to it, okay? So I get a phone call from a young girl who is born in Texas, raised in Texas, dating a Texan, living a very Texas lifestyle. And she says, hey, does Chabad need any venison? Venison is deer meat. Now, deer is kosher because any animal that chews its cud and has split hooves is kosher. And then it has to be slaughtered in a kosher way. Then we actually salt it and remove the blood. So we don't ingest blood because that's one of the prohibitions. We don't eat blood. And so actually, funny thing or interesting thing, I was once in a supermarket and a person in front of me was not obviously Jewish, but their cart it was a confusing cart. There was ham, but kosher meat. And then there was a lobster, but like kosher chicken. And I was like, oh, are you kosher? Like, this is kind of cool. Maybe I'm just meeting, like, who is this person? Like, this is cool. So like being friendly, I was like, what's up? And they're like, I'm like, oh, you keep kosher? They're like, no, I don't keep kosher. I'm, Catholic, but kosher meat is just so much better. Well, why is it so much better? It's salted. So that salt that extracts the blood actually infuses flavor into the meat. And so this girl calls and she said, do you want some venison, which is a kosher animal? And I said, well, actually, and I knew I was kind of like suspicious where this conversation was, because I never get conversations of people who are like calling to offer like large donations of beef or venison, which venison is pricey. It's a pricey meat. So I said, well, in theory, a deer is kosher. But what is this about? Like, your family's trying to donate, like what's going on? She's like, oh, well, I had a really successful hunting weekend and I have so much venison. Like, it's sitting in my freezer. I have no room. Do you want some? And I was like, no, thank you. And it's not because I'm a vegetarian. I actually can enjoy a good burger or a good steak. I'm not insulting anyone who can't. I'm very cool with everyone makes decisions that work for their life. Some for health and some for ethics and some for just what they feel. All good. But it was such a genuine gesture. And I really had to explain to her that actually as Jews, we don't eat meat that's hunted. But you know what's fascinating? We don't, because that's what God said and because that's what Torah said. But about 5 years ago, they did a scientific study, and they discovered that meat that is hunted or shot, from when the animal receives that injury until it actually dies, the body tries to send extra energy or to the location of the wound. It responds with chemically, and it actually releases toxins into the meat. And when an animal is slaughtered, one of my children actually is trained as a ritual slaughterer. He had opportunity to learn. He loves hands-on learning. He finds it fascinating. The science, the anatomy, the biology that he had to learn in order to be trained in this area was fascinating. He spent a whole year, and it was not a whole year during school. It was like at 6 a.m. and at 10 p.m. when he was learning. But he was saying to me, the knife that is used, aside from being a very expensive artisanal craft knife, has to have not even a single nick. Every time you use it, it has to be completely sharpened so the animal dies on right away on impact. Now, I'm not saying whether you're comfortable with this or not, but at the end of the day, it's the most humane way. And that's not because I decided it, it's because that's what the Torah said. So when you're eating meat that's going into your body, you know, what is it that you're putting in? And so Judaism will teach us how an animal can be slaughtered that's ethical, that's kosher. As a matter of fact, after an animal, my son was telling me this because he spent time in the slaughter. He said after an animal is no longer alive, they check the animal. If the animal was unwell, like let's say it had cancer, the animal is not kosher. The animal cannot be an ill animal. So there's so many little nuances and details. And of course, those are benefits, but that's actually not why we do this mitzvah. Because under mitzvot, there are three categories. Midot, chokim, mishpat. And one means it's traditional, it's judicial, it's rational, don't kill, don't steal. One is a reminder, testimony. Oh, we eat matzah to remind us that blah, 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 you know, ancestors were slaves. And the last one is super rational. It's above and beyond. It's not logical. It's because God said so. Because God created us and he knows what's best for us. And kosher is what is fit for us. So how do I know that this is kosher or this is kosher? Then here's another cool thing. 70% of the food market, you go to any supermarket in the United States, 70% of the food products actually has a kosher certification. 70. So you're standing in front of a bag, an aisle, a chip aisle. Well, there are chips that are kosher and there are chips that are not kosher. This wine right here, I don't know if you can see it, kosher certification. That means the winery, the people making it, everything is aligned. This is kosher wine. All the products I buy, and I actually do this with my students, I take them on a kosher tour of Chabad's pantry. And they're shocked, what, Barilla pasta is kosher? Here it is. What? You mean Hunt's tomato sauce is kosher? Yep. So Jelly Belly factory spent over $1 million to clean out the casings that held and molded the jelly beans from gelatin that was from a pig in order to go kosher. So how many people in the world are Jewish? How many people in the United States keep kosher? And yet the food industry knows we're gonna invest in this. This is important. And you have to understand that kosher certification is not just on the labels that we buy, but there's also rules to that. So there's rules of what we eat and what we don't, and that if, let's say, our meat is left unmonitored, we don't eat a meal like that. And there was actually a rabbi who was on a plane and he unwrapped his kosher meal, and in it is a nice, piece of meat, and he realized, he forgot there's a bread. He needs to wash his hand before he eats bread. Right before we eat bread, we wash our hands. He gets up to wash his hands. He comes back to his seat and he realizes he left his meal opened, and it's a meat meal and there's no one supervising it. So he realizes he can't eat it. So he eats the bread, he eats an apple that came with it, and he pushes the meat aside. And so the man, his seatmate, looks at him and says, hey dude, Rabbi, what's the deal? Like, why aren't you eating it? Are you vegetarian? Does it not look good? He said, no, actually we have this Jewish law that if something is not supervised, something significant like a meat is not supervised, we actually don't eat it, and I left it unsupervised. So he said, the man froze, looks at him, he says, your Judaism's so wise. So the rabbi says, what do you mean? He said, actually, when you went to the bathroom, I was like, these people with their kosher meals, they always look so good. I wonder what's the difference between his piece of meat and my piece of meat. He's like, and I swapped out the meat. And that's kosher supervision. So I was on a flight from Italy, and they said to me, here's your kosher meal. And it was a little box with no stickers, no labels, no mark of supervision. It was, someone wrote on a Sharpie, KSHR seat 118. I open it up. It's the same lasagna as everyone else. There's some extra apples in it. I eat the apples. I leave the lasagna. At the end of the flight attendant says, you a seat 18? 118? Yeah, seat 118. You know, it's not a real kosher. It's a fake kosher. I said, oh, I knew it was a fake kosher. He said, how did you know? He thought I was like a genius. Maybe I have a crystal ball. None of the above. There was no certification. There was no sticker telling me it was kosher. And it also looked too similar to everyone else's lasagna. And he said, no, we gave you one with no meat. I said, no, I knew. That's okay. So my point is that we are empowered in every decision we make, what we're putting in our mouth, that it's kosher, that we can elevate it, that we can uplift it, that it can nourish us, not just our body, but our soul, and that we can elevate the items. So yeah, you know what? It's not my job to elevate a cheeseburger. It's not my job to use the godly energy in a cheeseburger to learn Torah. Can't do it. It's not for me to, someone else can elevate a cheeseburger, but not a Jew. And with fish, we obviously want to make sure that we know that all crustaceans are not kosher. We only have fish with fins and scales. Bottom feeders are, it's not our thing. With birds, the Torah actually lists which ones we do eat, because there's so many different types of birds, and the Torah actually lists, and none of the birds of prey are birds that we eat. And even kosher is not just what we eat and bring into our house, it's how we set up our home. And that's not so easy to do in a dorm or in your parents' home. I know students who have an extra frying pan and an extra little plug-in burner and an extra pot and a pan and a dish and a thing, and it's work for them to keep kosher. But their roommates respect them, and they stand for it, and they make sure the products they buy are kosher. So it's a step-by-step thing to learn how to do it. There's an incredible book I recommend called Going Kosher in 30 Days. It's a 30-day strategic plan and step-by-step path to adding kosher into your life day by day. And it's so interesting because I had a student say, like, Manya, I get it. I get this kosher thing. It's important. It's significant. It's Jewish. It's what we've been doing for thousands of years. But I'm like, not ready. But what about like if yesterday I didn't eat lobster, right? Yesterday I kept kosher, but today that cheeseburger looks really good. Am I a hypocrite? And I think what we have to remember with every single action, every single mitzvah we do, we have the opportunity to make a choice. We're empowered to make a decision. And so eating a cheeseburger on Tuesday doesn't mean you shouldn't on Wednesday. Every mitzvah we do, every moment we elevate matter and materialism in this world, we have the power to do so. And it's in our hands. And with eggs, we want to make sure that there's no blood spots. And we want to make sure that in our kitchen, we keep the meat and milk separately. And we want to make sure the produce, we actually just want to check to make sure there's no bugs. The students who start cooking with me, I feel bad for them. Even if they don't want to go kosher, they end up going partial kosher because they start cleaning the parsley and they see the worms and the beetles and the cilantro and the forget the broccoli, and they see little worms crawling. They say, okay. And they say, you think, I don't know, let's pick your average. You think McDonald's is checking the lettuce to make sure there's no bugs? No, they're not. Indeed, they are not, right? Do you think that even you open a box of lettuce and you can see that's pre-washed, bugs, worms, beetles? I'm sure Itty has found her fair share of farm animals, webs with eggs and kale, forget it, don't ask. So we're very conscious with both our produce, with the eggs that we eat, that we just check, we put in a glass and we make sure it's kosher. With the food we're putting in our body, it makes us more intentional. So I want to move to the next part, because now that we're about intentionality, it's more than just what I bring into my house. And it's more than just me having meat and milk and meat separate. And it's more than me making conscious daily choices. There's opportunity at every given moment to elevate the world. And that's with brachot. So I have some exhibits here. We have our little tomato, beautiful apple. You already saw my wine. It's not 5 p.m., so I'm going to wait. You already saw my nice cold, refreshing drink, and I have here some cashews. You see, on every single thing, brachot, blessings, are really powerful. We often think of a bracha. Well, a bracha is a blessing. Okay, we said when we do a mitzvah, we give a bracha. This is not a mitzvah. Eating cashews is a mitzvah? Oh, no. Well, if they're kosher cashews and I'm going to use the energy for good, yeah, that's cool. I'm elevating the beautiful cashew tree and the cashew nut. Like, there's some cashew tree somewhere in the world that's like really proud right now, right? So what we have to understand is that Judaism is multisensory, and not just multisensory, it infuses every single part of life. And what we know is that we have a power to elevate matter and materialism, and food is, again, beyond nutrition. And if psychologically there's very, very deep stuff related to it, well, actually there are 6 brachot, 6 primary brachot, lessons that we say before we eat. And what we're doing is we're saying, Hashem, God, I'm going to try These come from a tree. So I'm going to make a ha'etz. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'etz. I wish I could share with you. They're really, really good. I can't. We haven't figured out that on Zoom technology yet. Just wait. We'll get there. So really, there are 6 primary brachot, and they do range in which order you would make them, blessings. And they range in order, kind of the significance of the food. So we'd always start the blessings with the bread, hamotzi lachem min haaretz. I remember once we had a bar mitzvah at our Chabad house, and a student came over to me, panicked. He said, they started the meal and it didn't say the motzi. They didn't say the motzi. They didn't say the motzi. And I said, because there's no bread. He thought you start a meal, you say motzi. I said, no, hamotzi lachem min haaretz. And I told him what the blessing literally means. Hamotzi, who brings out lechem, bread, min haaretz, from the earth. We are, so if you're not eating the bread, we don't make fake blessings here to make ourselves feel good. It's about God. It's about acknowledging God in our life. Thanking God that there's wheat. How often have we thought like, wow, it's so cool that there's wheat in the world? I don't know. The bread is good. We pop it on the toaster. We pop it in our mouth. We enjoy it and we move forward. Not in Judaism. There's an intentionality. There's an awareness. There's an understanding that every single thing I have comes from somewhere. You want to start appreciating life? We talked about gratitude in the morning. We have opportunities for gratitude throughout the day. Make a bracha. Yes, this tomato, borei peri ha'adama. Blessed are you, Lord our God, the borei, the creator of the fruits of the field, of the earth. Tomato grows on the ground. My apple, borei peri ha'etz. Thank you, God, the creator of trees, the fruits of the trees. I don't take anything for granted. And this one's a little well known. Borei pri ha'gafen. Thanking God for creating wonderful fruits of the vine. So we, at every given moment, even something so simple as sitting down for a piece of pizza, grabbing an apple on the run, we have a moment and an opportunity to, yes, even that little tomato or the little apple or the cashews all have a godly divine energy. Call it a micro soul if you want. And we can elevate it. So when we stop and do this, what happens when we make blessings? Does God need me every day to thank him that he made tomatoes? I don't know if God cares if I thank him that he made tomatoes, but I grow when I realize that I'm blessed to have a tomato on my table. And often we take the fact that we have a full fridge for granted until maybe we pass someone who's on the street who doesn't have a sandwich, who's hungry, right? And so the power is so strong. And in the Siddur, there's a whole line of blessings. And it's not only just on food. We thank God for thunder and lightning. Fascinating. My kids are not scared of thunder and lightning. 6 kids, different personalities, because every time it was thundering and lightning when they were children, we'd open the door. We'd be like, wow, look at the thunder and lightning that Hashem created. Did we make the bracha together? There's a blessing on seeing supernatural things. So it's really for us to remember and for us to be aware, for us to live with a little more intentionality, for us to live with a little bit more gratitude, a little bit more of an awareness with, we have one so locally sourced. Where does your food come from? Starbucks says big things. Our beans come from this region with this person picking them, and some nice, probably stock photos. Don't tell them I said that, hanging up there so you could feel like you know where your coffee beans come from, right? At the end of the day, this tells us where our food comes from. Thank you, Hashem, for the bounty, for the incredible gifts you give us, for the fact that I have food, for the fact that not everything tastes the same, right? And so all of this is so important to remember. And there's one added perk, both to kosher and to making blessings. As a mom, and I mentioned a mom of 6 with very different personalities. My oldest will be 21 next month, which I'm not sure how that's possible. And my youngest are 11. I still think I'm 21, so it's a little bit of an issue. It's okay. Well, denial is healthy. So from the oldest to the youngest, very different personalities. But if I had to sit down and write a list of, if I had a vision of what values I want to impart in my children, I would say gratitude, appreciation, intentionality, and I'd also say impulse control. You ever saw a child who never had anyone say no, who never had anyone put any boundaries in their way? They don't grow up to be the cutest adults. You may know them, they may have been your roommate once. It's not, you may have even dated them once. And I say dated because they were, right? We all know what that is. Okay, so what's my point? My point is the way we inculcate these behaviors is not at 20. It starts at a young child. It starts at a 2-year-old about to pop a lollipop in their mouth and you say, oh, bracha. And they say, even if they don't know the bracha fully, and they say it and they, now I can eat my lollipop. Or the little 5-year-old who's about to, ice cream, I want ice cream. Oh, I had a hot dog, I'm fleshig, I ate meat, I can't eat dairy right now. You're training a child to think, to have impulse control, to understand, to appreciate where they get things from. It's not about what I want, when I want it now. And these are not the reason we do the mitzvah, but there's certainly incredible side benefits to doing these mitzvot. You pass a supermarket and my kids were in the aisle, you know, in like a Walmart, let's say the aisle, you know, they put all those cheap teasers right at the end. So your kids, if you're shopping with them, will like, please, I want, you know, whatever. You ever saw that scene in a supermarket, a mom with a wagon, one kid, everyone goes to the other line. They're like, I don't care if there's 10 more people and I'm staying away from that wagon with the kid, with the chocolate bars, with the candies, right? They don't want anything to do with it. I was once there. I think I had 5 out of 6 kids with me. So already as I'm like, stick out in the store, like, who is this woman? And like, what's up? And that they think I'm going to be Mormon or something. I don't know. So they never saw Hasidic women in their lives, right? They didn't know that was a thing. So I'm standing in the aisle and the woman behind me, and my kid's like, can I have this? And I say, no, it's not kosher. And he says, oh, can I have the chocolate? It's not kosher. And the woman behind me says, what kind of parenting book do you follow? I said, it's called Judaism. It's called boundaries. It wasn't even an option. And as a matter of fact, when we went to New York with our kids when they were a little older, and they walked into a kosher store that was the size of my house, 4,000 square feet, every item is, you mean everything in here is kosher? I can eat? Wow, like blows their mind. So I think that for all of us, no matter where we are, if you're eating an apple, you're eating kosher. If you're going to buy a box of pasta or a bag of chips or a bottle of soda, look for that kosher certification. And then take the time, maybe once a meal, maybe one meal a day, make a bracha, thank Hashem. And you know what happens when we increase gratitude and intentionality in our life? Good things. We're happier. We're more aware. And we can do that daily. And that's part of the gift that Judaism gives us with the kosher kitchen, kosher food. And you can do it in your dorm. In every meal, it's a decision. So I want to say to you ladies, l'chaim, if there's any questions, I'm available to go for it now. L'chaim to each and every one of you. May you be empowered, because the truth is, you guys are the ones who are going to make sure there's a continuity of kosher kitchens around the world. So l'chaim to you. L'chaim to you, to making healthy, informed, educated, spiritual, powerful, and attainable daily decisions. L'chaim. Any questions?
Just ask. Don't wait. Just ask.
How long, if you're eating one thing, how long do you have to wait before you say it again? Like, let's say you open a bag of chips while you're watching a movie, and then like 20 minutes pass and you want another one.
So
like,
it's a really good question. I know, I'm not sure exactly the minutes. I do know that 72 minutes after, let's say I'm eating a meal and I walk away and I didn't make the after blessing, or I didn't continue eating, then I have about a window of 72 minutes to make the after blessing and do it. I don't think every single time I'm taking a drink, I know, I'm not sure the exact time. I should have this in my mind, but remember I said my brain doesn't hold on to numbers. My gut instinct's saying 30 minutes, but I know for sure 72 minutes is the right answer, that if I get up and move away and it's 72 minutes later, I would not, that would be, finished meal, and I would not make the blessing in. So there may be an exact answer, and I'm sorry, but I do know it's 72 minutes from like when I started my meal, like when I stopped eating. And if I continue eating, then it's still part of the meal. But if I don't, and I walk away and I wander and I get in the car and whatever, then the meal's over. Okay. I know that you had a very good question. I forgot your name. Go ahead. You raised your hands earlier.
Oh, yeah. So actually,
How do
in
you
the end,
pronounce your name?
Salome Rivka.
Beautiful. The
Thank
way
you.
it's spelled makes
Thank-
sense.
So I had one question. Now I have three questions. So the first one is, can you say amen online to a blessing? If someone is doing a blessing online, can you still say amen even though you're not in the same room?
Yeah, you can say amen. Just don't say a woman. If those who get it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yes. Say yes, because you're saying I agree. So what's
Okay.
wrong? You're like, cool, I agree. I think God's cool for also making apples.
So,
And it also brings an awareness to you. It's actually people are intentional to make their blessings out loud so others can make Sammy.
Okay, perfect.
Bring more good energy. Why not?
Yeah, it was just about the online thing. I didn't know if we had to be in the same room. So actually my second question was answered. And then the third one would be when you're invited somewhere, for example, family, and they're saying that it's kosher. And then do you have, like, it's a little bit touchy sometimes to tell, people can be sensitive and they're telling you it's kosher and you're telling them I cannot eat because it's not kosher according to my thing. So it can start a fight. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's not simple, and I don't want to create any major issues in your family. And you're right that people who grow in their observance of kosher really struggle with this, and they have had to have some really hard conversations with their parents, with their friends, with their family. One thing I will say, I had a student who had this incredible opportunity. A professor took them under their wing and was getting this great, this great internship. And the launch of the project, he called everyone together for a meal, and the student says, I don't know what to do. I started keeping kosher, and now he's going to invite me, and I'm going to insult him. Like, that's a really great, hey, thanks for taking me on. I don't trust your food. Like, thanks. And I said to him, let me just ask you a question. If you had a peanut allergy or a gluten allergy, you were anaphylactic, would you mind saying to him, hey, so sorry, like, this is my food preference for health reasons, and I can't. Would you feel bad? He's like, no, of course I wouldn't feel bad. I said, so why do we feel bad about kosher? So I think when it comes to family dynamics, I would actually speak to a rabbinic authority, because it depends what the meal is, where there's areas for leniency in order to maintain shalom, in order to maintain peace. It depends on like what the issues are with the kosher in their space, in their home. And it's complicated, but the beautiful thing about Jewish law is a rabbi would actually be able to give you very customized guidance. And there's more flexibility at times than you realize. So I would really say this is one of those cases where you would ask a rabbi specific details, who knows your family, knows dynamics, who can guide you with a lot of sensitivity and wisdom, and understand the parameters of what can be stretched and what cannot.
Okay, but like, for example, when it comes to friend, they're telling you it's kosher, but you don't have the same definition of kosher.
Right. And I think that people can understand that we all look at things a little differently and say, I get it. Do you mind it? So maybe, so maybe you have to be creative. Like sometimes it's like, okay, can I also bring something for the meal and then just eat that? Like you got to like think outside the box, be creative. If you have someone that you can like run the details by more specifically, because I don't want to give you very specific guidance for a case that's like, or very general guidance for a very specific case. I feel like it's a disservice. So either you can reach out to me privately. I'm happy to like voice note back and forth with some practical ideas and get a bigger picture. But I think there are ways to go about it with confidence, with sensitivity, and with being a mensch. Right? I always say, there's a lot of things that Judaism demands, but it also demands that we're a mensch. Like being a mensch is also part of Judaism. So we always have, and never ever use God or religion as your banner to assert yourself in your friendships or your family, like, ever. It's never going to be a good thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Yeah.
Okay, this might be a silly question, but what if you were to sit down and have a meal right now of the cashews, apple, and tomato with a glass of wine? It's a weird meal. Would you say all the blessings at the beginning?
Good question. There's actually a hierarchy of what order we would say the blessings. So you're onto something real. So first of all, it's not the worst meal. I would just maybe take away the tomato and add cheese, because apple, cheese, wine, and nuts sounds amazing. Full meal right there, right? Well-balanced meal. So I would have no issues with that. But what I would say is you can understand there's actually a hierarchy of what order the blessings would be said. And it's based on the kind of the significance of it. So you would start with like the hamotzi, mizonot, like if there was a cookie here, because we need a cookie with that too, right? You can't have a cheese board and wine without crackers. So you'd start with the mizonot on the crackers, and then you would make hagafen on the wine, and then you would make ha'etz on the fruit, and then you would make shahakol on, well, there was no shahakol, or ha'etz on the cashews. You wouldn't make it twice. If you're making it in the same meal, this covers both. you'd want to think about them. You want to have intentionality, and then you would make a shahakol on the seltzer. So almost like from the most significant to like, not saying that this is not significant, but this is like way more tampered with, way more not as natural, et cetera, et cetera. So Jewish law does give us that system of hierarchy. And I'm sure Itty like has a link that she's going to drop in with like how to say blessings in what order.
Already did. I'll put it again.
See, did I know, or do I know? She's like the best co-pilot right here. Anyone else have any other questions? So that's a great question.
Yeah, I
And
have a
just
question.
add to that for a second, because Jess asked if you say all the blessings first and then eat the food.
No. As you're eating each thing, you would say the blessing. And it gets a little more complicated. What if I'm taking 2 crackers and putting cheese in between? Now, is it a sandwich? No, you're laughing, but when we were younger in school, we would have, some people have a spelling bee, we would have a brachot bee, where we have to get a giant book full of blessings and wafers and licorice. And I got out because I thought you made I think in 3rd grade. You made ha'etz on a banana. Well, really, you make ha'adama, because eitz means tree, and a banana, it's a fruit, but actually it comes from a plant that kind of goes away and comes back. So you would make ha'adama because it grows in the ground. It's not a bark tree. So it gets a little complicated. I'm not going to lie. Remember I said people spend a year learning the laws of kosher? The laws of brachot will take time too. But there's tons of guides out there. There's apps for it, like you name it. There's no shortage of ways to implement this slowly but surely. And you would make it as each thing is going, but you would prioritize, like eat the cracker first so you can say that blessing first. Okay? Great question. Any other questions?
Yeah,
I had an interesting experience with that thing that you said, Manya, of like eating it right before you eat it. One of the laws is to kind of like hold it in your hand and have it ready, so that there shouldn't be a divide between when you say the bracha and eat the food.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get a little, we're like, okay, like, so I was holding like a bottle of seltzer, and I said the blessing because it takes a second to snap off the cap and, drink it. And then I ended up struggling with the cap for, quite a few seconds. So you really want to have your food ready to eat.
You want to be mitzvah ready.
Yeah.
Dara? You
Dara?
don't like want to make a blessing, walk to the kitchen, walk to the dining room. It's part of one thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Dara, you had a...
Yeah, you were talking before about like the story on the plane with like the supervision. Can you like explain that more? Because I've never heard that before, like that kind of rule.
Yeah, so you would want to make sure, it happens to be one of the laws within kosher, is because recognizing that a meat restaurant has to have full-time supervision, and the owner of the meat restaurant cannot the fridges are locked overnight, that he does not have the key. The neutral kosher supervisor, who's not in charge of what meat is coming in and out, who's in charge of what meat's coming in and out, but it's not in charge, it's not his business with his money. He actually supervises it, because meat is kosher meat's expensive. So meat is very more significant. And so we wouldn't just leave it out or be more casual. The laws of kosher supervision with meat are more sophisticated, because meat is more expensive and sophisticated. And so it's more nuanced. So what makes it kosher or not? So in that case with the rabbi, he forgot this small, detail in Jewish law, that he left his meal opened. It wasn't wrapped. If it was wrapped, it was no big deal. No one would tamper with it, because what's someone going to take? Your bag of chips or a nice, more significant. The meat is more significant, it's more expensive, it's more significant. And in this case, that man had swapped the meat. Does that make a little bit more sense now, Dara?
Yeah, is this only for meat, or is this like for all foods?
For meat, well, definitely for meat. So
okay.
Obviously people are more careful, but it's not like, definitely for meat, there's a more significant level of supervision you'd want to have.
So if there was like an unopened or like an opened bag of chips laying out somewhere, like
like what's someone to steal your chips and replace them with other chips?
Right. So like you would be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Cashew milk is not ha'etz, because it is not. You cannot identify that it comes from a cashew. Would be shahakol. It's so processed. Chopped up cashews you can still make ha'etz. It depends on the texture. Actually, believe it or not, like is it visibly still related to the item that it is? Right. Cashew milk, oat milk, macadamia milk. And there's also how much cashew is in it and how much is water. It's complicated. It's not simple. Ladies, these are not simple, but this is fascinating and hopefully doable. Yeah.
What about gum? Because you actually don't eat gum when you do shackle, but then after you and then you throw it out. So
That's a really good question. I actually never chew gum because I have a terrible jaw. So I haven't chewed gum since I'm like 11 or 9, really long time. I think you would make a bracha, maybe you would make a bracha, but also try to eat something that's food. I'm not sure. Do you know specifically gum? I don't eat gum. I think you would make a bracha while it has the flavor. I think, I mean, we could find out, like something new to learn. So this is a good one. I actually like gum. I just don't do it because I have such a bad jaw that it's not worth a migraine.
What about mouthwash then, or toothpaste?
Oh, no, you're not eating it. If you're eating, you're never, do you know that thing in the back of the toothpaste and the mouthwash that says don't
swallow.
Not swallowing it? No, you don't.
Okay.
You guys have such great questions, by the way. I feel like by tomorrow, everyone's going to be making brachas, making more kosher, like little steps. Y'all are rock stars. Any other questions, thoughts, ideas that someone's really curious about?
Since somebody already mentioned gum, and this is something that I've been wondering, so like, does gum have to be kosher then? Because like
that's
you're
a
just
really
chewing
good,
it?
yes, because gum that's not kosher has the thing that makes it stretchy comes not from a kosher animal, from a very unkosher animal, from pig. Marshmallows that are not kosher or vegan, the gelatin is from the legs of a pig, and so is not kosher gum. I don't want to ruin not kosher gum for you, but that's just a fact. So yes, definitely something you want to be aware of.
So in this case, would you say that something vegan is kosher?
Okay, complicated because not everything vegan is kosher. It happens to be the vegan industry has a lot of kosher in it, meaning it's very trendy. I don't know why it's so trendy, but a lot of things that are vegan, a lot of things in the health food section are kosher. Maybe it's because the way they're being made, or I have no idea, or because it's not as many animal products, or because they're more careful with cross-contamination. But ultimately, they have the supervision that's ensuring that they're kosher. But vegan would not mean kosher, because you can have a beautiful broccoli, and guess what happens? There's a lot of worms in it. I once had students checking broccoli for me. I thought they would never eat broccoli again. Took them an hour and a half. They're like, Manya, never again are we doing beef and broccoli al Chabad. This is way too much work. We don't call it hazing, we call it hazing. They were like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, well, y'all wanted beef and broccoli, so now let's check that broccoli for worms. So yeah. So any questions? Does anyone have any, does anyone want a breakdown of this again to kind of look at this a little deeper, or practical things of what they can do? Like, I'm living in a dorm with other people. My parents are gonna be like, what's wrong with you?
I have another question.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
About, you said checking lettuce and strawberries and stuff. What's the best way to go about that? Just soak it in water? Or...
That's great. So actually with strawberries, so little funny known, I don't want to tell you, but strawberries can actually have bugs, and some of those little seeds that look like seeds can actually be bugs. So what you would do is, I don't want to ruin strawberries. By the end of this, everyone's going to be like, forget it, Manya, you ruined everything for me. Take the strawberry and you want to cut off the leaves, because a lot of the bugs, they want to hang out right beneath the leaves attached to the strawberry, right on the top. And so I always cut off the top, and then we soak it in a bowl of water, wash it off really well. So we actually have a power washer that really helps with kosher for kale and stuff, because it really hoses it down and cleans it. And then you would want to actually look at the water, because if there were little buggies, they would be in the water and you would know. Yep. And with lettuce, same thing. Literally, I wash down piece by piece of the lettuce, the green leaf, the kale. Kale's a little more buggy, so I soak it in water with a little bit of either soap or salt, because basically a lot of bugs, such fascinating stuff, by the way, with kosher. A lot of the bugs, God made them amazingly, that their feet have kind of little grippers or suction to the animal, to the plant. And so the salt or a little bit drop of dish soap will cut the suction, and then they'll be floating in your bowl or in the bottom of the bowl.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lightbox method is doable. It's just not always convenient. So I have good lighting, and I have a power washer, and I soak things, and it's amazing, because you think something like cilantro, right? What is it? And literally I found ladybugs in it. I found worms in it, beetles, you name it. And so we first power wash it. We wash it really, really well. Then we soak it in that water with the solution. And sometimes I have to do it more than once. And sometimes it's too buggy and I just throw the whole bunch out. I'm like, I am not dealing with this infestation. We have enough animals in this Chabad house. I am not, no, I'm kidding. I'm saying I'm not, I have enough bugs. I have enough things. I have enough critters. We don't need more. So I will just throw it out because it's $3 and I'm not stressing myself out. Does that make sense?
Another question.
Yeah, go Tara.
So let's say like you're checking something and like you just said, like it's just too much, you just want to get rid of it. Like you can just give it to a friend who doesn't keep kosher,
Absolutely.
right? Okay.
Absolutely. I have a lady who works for Chabad who's like, I would say she's the angel of the reason why Chabad exists. And I can't tell you how often I get gifts that are not kosher, gifts that don't have certification to our like kosher standards. And she already knows, or Instacart delivers the wrong can of corn that has no certification. And she'll take it home. And I'm like, here. She already knows. Yeah, 100%. Don't waste. No.
Yeah, no, that's what I would
That's
figure,
not a Jewish thing, wasting. So
thank you.
yeah.
Do you
Anyone
check-
else?
Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
Do you check frozen fruits or vegetables that have a hechsher?
Okay, so if it has a kosher certification, and it's a legit one, because I could sit at home in my pajamas and have a new kosher agency that I don't actually do anything but sit at home in my pajamas on the couch, right? I can open, I don't know. Actually, I'll give you an example. Our Chabad house, I don't know if anyone knows Texas A&M, we have this thing, it's very much part of our culture. It's a gig'em. It's a thumbs up. I know, Alana, you've seen it this way, this, whatever. We're not going to go there. No rivalry here. I'm not going to sell them off. We're going to keep it kosher here. Our schools have a little bit of an issue, a little bit of beef. So we do this. It's a gig'em. And my husband, we started certifying kosher food on campus. And we actually are the only campus in the entire state of Texas that has a kosher kitchen on campus that has grab and goes of danishes and sandwiches and salads and egg salad and tuna salad on campus that is throughout campus that anyone can use. And Texas A&M said to my husband and I, if we say we're here for every type of student, and this is a diverse university, we want to make sure we're there for the Jews too, which is so cool. Go Texas. Okay. So our university, when we're coming to come up with like this Gig'em K. So my husband literally on any graphic design program created a Gig'em K. It's a thumbs up with a cute little hand and it has a little cute K on it. And it's in our school colors. And that's the stickers that the university uses to put on the item. So when a student sees it, they know it's kosher. It was prepared in that kitchen, not a different kitchen. And we have someone who goes in once a week to check the lettuce and to make sure the ingredients are and that they didn't mess up the kitchen, et cetera, et cetera. It's in literally a locked area in this very giant basement full of kitchenness. And so the Gig'em K, I guess, went online. All of a sudden, one of my students returned back a trip to New York and they were like waving this magazine. They're like, Rabbi, I saw Chabad at A&M on the cover of Kosher magazine. So apparently there's a kosher magazine. It's all about Kosher. It's Kosher Ink or whatever it is. And they produce a magazine 3 times a year. And under the title of New Up and Coming Certifications, Gig'em K. So anyone can make it a hechsher. Anyone can make a certifying agency. You got to know who's behind it. Is it a guy in pajamas? Or is it a rabbi who's actually making sure that the lettuce and stuff is being checked? Stephanie can start Stephanie K, Stephanie Kosher. Doesn't mean anything. Just seeing a K on a product means nothing. It's not copyright. No one's in charge. No one's checking. I once saw a K on a thing of pork rinds. I wish I had the picture. I'd pull it up. It was the funniest thing because I knew it wasn't kosher, but someone in the marketing labeling department was like, let's put a K on it, right? So we have to also know who's behind it, that they have standards. So you would want to make sure that that's what the certification like is backed by something, because anyone can make a certification. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like if there's like an OU on like frozen strawberries.
Yeah,
would
no,
you
that's
watch
fine,
that?
because it means that someone's at that plant and checked that batch of strawberries and made sure it's not. I wouldn't say regular frozen broccoli is okay. Do you remember I said about that hour and a half of worm checking? Guess what? It was frozen broccoli without a kosher certification because I couldn't get it. So yes, if it has a certification, it means there's someone backing it. There's someone who's checking it. There's someone who's on site. There are times that agencies pull their certification because the company's not doing things to standard. There's tons of stories of that. Okay. So yeah, that's fine. You can't always access it and you also have to know who's behind it. Okay. Make sense?